So how exactly does a bloodthirsty conqueror just transform into one of history's absolute greatest ambassadors of peace? It's a wild question, right? Today, we're diving into this explainer to look at a man who started out as a prince his own family didn't even want. He grew up completely surrounded by warfare and eventually evolved into a ruler who, after witnessing the deaths of literally hundreds of thousands of people, decided to become the world's ultimate emissary of peace. We're talking about Emperor Ashoka and how a king who was never even meant for the throne ended up completely reshaping the world.
Here's a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll be covering 1. The unwanted Mauryan prince. 2. A bloody fight for power. 3. The horrors of Kalinga. 4. The path of peace. And finally 5. An everlasting legacy. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the unwanted Mauryan prince. Okay, let's set the stage here. We are going way back to the ancient Mauryan Empire. This massive realm was founded by the great emperor Chandragupta Maurya and his brilliant mentor, Chanakya. They had basically managed to unite a totally fractured India, which, as you can imagine, set the stage for some incredibly intense palace politics. Born in 304 BCE to Emperor Bindusara, Ashoka's arrival honestly brought a lot more political tension than actual joy. With multiple princes all vying for the future throne, Ashoka was thrust into this insanely high-stakes environment. And this tension would just keep accelerating through the turbulent decades leading right up to his father's death in 273 BCE, and then his own really hard-fought coronation in 269 BCE. You see, Ashoka just wasn't the favorite. He wasn't even considered conventionally handsome by the standards of the time. But what he lacked in royal favor, he absolutely made up for in sheer grit. I mean, the guy was a powerhouse. He excelled in swordsmanship, horse riding, and strategy. His first really major test came when he was sent to crush a rebellion in Taxila, and honestly, everyone expected a total bloodbath. But instead, Ashoka realized the people there were just angry at corrupt officials, not the king himself. So he punished the officials and quelled the entire rebellion completely peacefully. It was a brilliant move. This massive success earned him the governorship of Ujjain, where he really mastered governance and actually met Devi, a remarkably intelligent and kind woman who would go on to deeply influence his life. Moving right along to section 2, a bloody fight for power. So, despite all of Ashoka's successes, the jealousy of his brothers was seriously brewing. When Emperor Bindusara fell gravely ill, the palace basically transformed from a home into a ruthless battlefield. The divide was super stark. On one side, you had Susima, the eldest son, who fully expected the throne to just be handed to him. And on the other side, you had Ashoka, who was strongly backed by the army and some really influential ministers. Susima knew he had to eliminate his brother, which led to all these secret assassination plots behind palace walls. Bravery alone wasn't going to save Ashoka here. He had to rely on cold, calculated strategy to survive. In 273 BCE, Emperor Bindusara passed away, and that plunged the Maurya Empire into total darkness. This wasn't just some standard political dispute. Ancient texts actually describe this as a brutal fratricidal war. We're talking brother against brother. Every single victory Ashoka claimed literally meant destroying a piece of his own family. It was a tragic, incredibly bloody struggle, but ultimately Ashoka did emerge victorious. By 269 BCE, he wasn't just an unwanted prince anymore, he was Emperor Ashoka. Which brings us to section 3, the horrors of Kalinga. Now, Ashoka's ambition definitely didn't stop at just winning the throne. He went on to conquer almost the entire Indian subcontinent. But there was this one fiercely independent state that absolutely stood defiant, and that was Kalinga. It was this powerful symbol of freedom. When Ashoka demanded their surrender, the response was basically absolute. We will die, but we will not bow. So around 261 BCE, the stage was set for a truly terrifying conflict. You had the most powerful army in the world on one side, and on the other, the fierce warriors of Kalinga, where ordinary citizens, young people, and even women rushed to the battlefield to defend their homeland to the very last breath. The sheer scale of the carnage here is honestly difficult to even comprehend. According to ancient records, and specifically Ashoka's very own rock edicts, 100,000 people were slaughtered in this single devastating conflict. Just let that massive number sink in for a second. And the tragedy didn't even end with the dead. Another 150,000 people were captured and taken away as prisoners. Families were completely torn apart, homes were destroyed, and the entire future of a state was just reduced to ashes in a matter of days. Kalinga was defeated, and the Mauryan Empire had won. But you have to ask, at what cost? When Emperor Ashoka actually stepped onto the battlefield after the dust settled, there was zero celebration.
As he walked slowly among the broken chariots, the wounded, the crying mothers, and the orphaned children, this really profound realization hit him. Looking down at his own blood-stained sword, he asked himself, "Is this my greatest victory?" For what was probably the first time in history, a victorious emperor was utterly terrified by his own triumph. Legend says he couldn't even sleep that night. He realized that through all this conquest, he had actually suffered a massive spiritual defeat.
Let's move on to Section 4, the Path of Peace. This emotional rock bottom ended up sparking what is arguably the single greatest transformation in ancient history. Shortly after the war, Ashoka met a Buddhist monk named Apagupta. The monk looked at this totally broken emperor and delivered a truth that would quite literally change the world. He said, "You can win a kingdom with a sword, but not hearts." Those words just pierced Ashoka's soul. On that very day, he made a solemn vow and he laid down his sword forever. His new conquest wouldn't be through war, but through justice, duty, and humanity.
Talk about a historic rebrand, right? He transitioned from being known as Chanda Ashoka, which was the fierce conqueror ruling by terror, to Dharma Ashoka, the righteous ruler dedicated to conquering hearts. By embracing the teachings of Gautama Buddha, he integrated nonviolence, truth, compassion, and kindness into the very core of his entire empire.
And the changes he implemented were radical, and they happened fast. Ashoka used his absolute, unrivaled power not to gear up for the next big war, but to launch these incredibly progressive welfare reforms. He banned the unnecessary slaughter of animals. He ordered that trees be planted and wells be dug right along the roads just for the comfort of everyday travelers. He built rest houses and, which is pretty amazing for the time, he established medical treatments and hospitals not just for humans but for animals too. His measure of greatness was no longer about the size of his army. It was all about the depth of his compassion.
But Ashoka didn't just want peace for his own people. He wanted it for the whole world. He embraced Buddhism and made the welfare of the people his primary state duty. And to make sure future generations remembered peace over war, he literally carved his messages of religious harmony, truth, and good governance onto massive rocks and these towering stone pillars across the land. He even became history's first monarch to deploy his resources globally for peace. He sent emissaries far and wide, including his own children, Mahendra and Sanghamitra, who actually traveled to Sri Lanka to spread this revolutionary message of compassion all across South Asia and beyond.
Finally, we reach Section 5, an everlasting legacy. Before taking his final breath around 232 BCE, Ashoka left behind some absolutely incredible physical and ideological markers. While his empire would, eventually crumble, like all empires do, his ideas proved indestructible. He commissioned the famous Sanchi Stupa, which still stands today as a global monument to peace. His rock edicts, which are scattered all across modern-day India, Nepal, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, they essentially serve as ancient billboards for living a moral life. And then there's the magnificent Sarnath pillar, featuring 4 lions, representing truth, courage, and justice. Astonishingly, Ashoka's name was actually almost lost for centuries, that is, until 19th century archaeologists deciphered these edicts and finally reintroduced his story to the world.
And honestly, nothing connects this ancient history directly to our modern reality quite like the Ashoka Chakra. This 24-spoke wheel, which was taken directly from the base of Ashoka's Sarnath lion capital, now sits proudly right at the very center of the modern Indian national flag. It's a daily, visible reminder that his ultimate realization of peace remains deeply, deeply woven into the very fabric of India's identity today.
Think about this entire breathtaking journey of a single human life. We started with a prince nobody wanted. He became a conqueror the entire world feared. But in the end, he consciously chose to become an immortal ambassador of humanity. He proved once and for all that true victory doesn't come from the edge of a sword, but from the depths of human empathy.
Which leaves us with a pretty massive question to think about. If an ancient emperor, wielding absolute power in an incredibly brutal world, could stand among the ruins and realize that true victory lies in humanity and not the sword, what can our modern leaders learn from the ashes of Kalinga? Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.